Hey Julia, how are you doing today?
Doing good, Justice. How are you?
I'm doing great. So, our episode today is a little unconventional at not your urging, but maybe at your suggestion. Can you talk a little bit about what we're doing differently today than how I would normally record a podcast?
Certainly. We had a discussion a couple weeks ago, and you asked me to come on your podcast, and I was like, "Cool, that would be fun." But I've done a number of podcast interviews, been a guest on other people's podcasts, and the ones that I enjoyed the most were ones that were not scripted, where you had prepared questions that you were sent beforehand, and you prepared your answers, and then you get on the phone and you talk to the podcast host, and you might as well not be having a conversation because you're just reading your questions and answers off to each other, and it felt very kind of rehearsed and unnatural. And the ones that were fun were the ones where we just kind of shoot the breeze and talk about things that come up and just talk like normal human beings. So um, that was my suggestion, and you liked it, so here we are.
And we've decided to really take it to an extreme because normally I do a bunch of research and try to have a pretty solid understanding of where the guest is in their life, career, etc. Have a lot of questions prepared in an outline with an introduction and everything. This time I have nothing. I don't even have a piece of paper. I mean, I do have paper here, but I'm not going to take any notes like I usually do. This is just us, just the two of us. So, Julia, can you maybe how do you introduce yourself these days? If you meet someone in a, let's start with a professional setting. How do you introduce yourself?
Well, it depends. So I just started a second business. So if I'm trying to get their business for that one, I will introduce myself as a bookkeeper. But what I have been for the past 3, 4 years is a caricature artist. So that's what I do. I do digital caricatures at all kinds of different corporate events, trade shows, that kind of thing. And it's been pretty fun. And I started doing that full time in 2013. I used to be a caricature artist at Legoland, California. That's where I got started. That's where I learned how to do it. I started freelancing a couple months after that, and it just kind of grew organically into this kind of little company. So now I have about 10 other artists that I subcontract out to all over the country, and we do all kinds of different trade shows. Trade show season is coming up, so I've got a lot of travel next month. I've got Austin and Maryland and Sacramento and Vegas, and so it's going to be very busy, and my back will hurt a lot because I will be drawing for hours on end, but that's okay because it's still fun.
Really, I didn't know that back pain was common for people who draw. Is there a reason for that, or?
Well, you're just, you're kind of crouched over your Wacom tablet for hours on end. So back tends to get a little sore, but a small price to pay for the fabulous life I lead.
Do you have any exercises or because we have a mutual friend who loves pain relief exercises, so I'm curious if you have any that you do to, limber up before a long caricature session.
Not really, no. I am not good about the whole self-care thing. I'm spectacularly bad at it. So my solution is generally just to pop an ibuprofen.
I love it. I love hearing from people who see themselves in so I tend to be a mess. And so when I meet other people who are a mess but still can make big things happen, you know that those people have some secrets that enable them to do a lot even if, 80% of their life is like just mixed up.
Yeah, I am very much into that too, and I particularly love people that are successful without having like a very strict morning ritual or who don't meditate, because those two things seem to be like the issues of the day. Like those two things are the secret to success in any entrepreneurial venture. And I have a terrible morning routine, and I don't believe in meditation. And I get sick of hearing that like these two things are the key to success, because they're not. And you can be wildly successful, and lots of people are, without having them. And I don't like this kind of cult mentality around these like particular things that you must do if you're going to be successful. And I think it's bullshit.
What is the key to success?
I don't think there's any one key to success. Like, show up and do good work and keep your word, and the rest will just kind of happen or not. Like, I think a lot of people's success too is accidental, but they think that it's something great that they did, and they think that they can, write a book about it and generalize, when really they were just lucky. I mean, I don't think that's the case in every situation, but I think luck plays a much bigger factor than most people are willing to admit.
Showing up, doing good work, and keeping your word. And showing up's half the battle, so doing good work and keeping your word is really only the other half.
Yeah, I mean, like those things seem to me to be kind of the sine qua non of any kind of success. You do have to show up, and you have to do the work, and you should keep your word, and the rest, just let your, personality and what you like and the way that you like to operate dictate how you're going to conduct yourself the rest of the time. I mean, all kinds of different people are successful with all kinds of different personality profiles and habits and vices and everything else. So I don't think it's a terribly great idea to like generalize and say, this is the one thing you must do. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And personally, I am someone who tries to have a good morning routine and also tries to meditate as a part of that morning routine. And that's just one of the many ways that you and I are different. So are there any other ways that we're different off the top of your head that you could tell the audience about?
Well, let's see. You're short, I'm tall. I don't know, man. You know a lot about machine learning and AI, and I know next to nothing about that. And you're very let's see, what's the correct word for this? Flavorful. I've spoken.
That's a nice way of saying exotic, dark brown man.
Well, you're that too, and I am the opposite. I am a nice pasty white. I don't know, like that's what I'm saying. Like, we're both just very different people, and we both manage to have interesting lives, and I think that's wonderful.
I'll tell you something though. My mother and you share a maiden last name.
Really, Kelly?
Hers is with an EY and yours is just with a Y.
Is your mother Irish?
She thinks that she is. Her side of the family's been in the United States since like before the Revolution, so it's unclear what exactly goes into the lineage at that point.
Mm-hmm. What's your dad's ethnicity?
He is from South India.
No way.
Yes, ma'am.
I would not have guessed that for you. I was born in India, New Delhi.
I did know that. That's more northeast though. Pretty close to the border of Tibet, if I recall.
I actually am a terrible person, and I have no idea where New Delhi is. I just know I was born there.
It's okay. Geography is not nearly as important as the liberal educational elite would have you to believe.
Good, because, one time I was super ashamed of myself that I couldn't point out Iraq on a map, and now I can.
Very nice. Do you know that Iraq is where the Fertile Crescent is, apparently the seat of human civilization?
Yeah, that's well, I mean, lots of crazy stuff came out of there, like Persia and, anyway, if I start talking too much about this, I'm going to reveal my ignorance, so I will stop now.
Oh, I think we're beyond that. We both have revealed some level of ignorance, I'm sure. I don't even know. what level of ignorance we've already revealed. Let me ask you something. I'm curious. Is there anything? So you're transitioning into this bookkeeping business. Where does this come from? I mean, where does a caricature artist, who's running a successful business, going to events and sending other artists to events? Where do you just decide to, you know what, we're going to start a bookkeeping business as well?
Yeah, that's a fair question. A couple reasons. So around this time last year, I decided that I was just ready for some recurring revenue in my life because it's from a distance, it seemed like a beautiful, beautiful thing, and I'd never really had it ever since I became self-employed. So the nature of the caricature world is that there's not a lot of recurring revenue, so you can't really your revenue stream. There's not a lot of stability, and you can make good money in it, but it is very unpredictable, and there are ups and downs and busy seasons and not busy seasons. And I like a little more predictability and stability in my financial life. So that was one reason, because you know, any service where you have monthly clients, paying you a certain amount every single month and they're on automatic payments, is something that appealed to me. So that was one reason. The second reason was my business partner, who I've been friends with for, probably more than 10 years, had always wanted to start her own thing. She'd been doing bookkeeping and accounting for a number of years as an employee in different companies. She wanted to start her own thing, and she didn't really have any business development experience or marketing, and she wasn't really interested in that side of it. She just wanted to work for herself and do the work. So it just seemed like a good partnership because I had the time, because the caricature business, it doesn't exactly run itself, but I have a lot of things automated and I have the help of an assistant, and there's just not a lot to do on a day-to-day basis. So we went for it, and it's been really great because I was basically running my caricature business alone since I started in 2013, and I used to think that I was a lone wolf when it came to business, and I like to do things myself and make all my own decisions, and only have to answer to myself, and some aspects of that are really great, and other times you just get really lonely, just working for yourself with no one who's really holding you accountable. You kind of lose sense of community. You don't have colleagues that you can talk to every day or complain about, something if something's bothering you. There's no one really truly on your team. So having a partner has been really great in that sense because it's somebody to talk to, it's somebody to be accountable to, it's someone to bounce ideas off of. And I'm just much, much happier ever since we did that. So all in all, it's turning out pretty great. And then why bookkeeping, particularly, is because I like accounting. I have a degree in accounting. I actually supported myself with art while I went to school for accounting, which is kind of the opposite way that everybody else does it. But it worked for me, and I've always enjoyed it. So here we are.
So it seems to me, at least in this conversation, that you're kind of an expert in following your passion. Would you agree with that?
No.
No.
I don't really have a passion. I was kind of born without that gene. And I don't know why, and I can't explain it, but my passion for caricatures was extremely short-lived. It basically lasted until my first week of actual work at Legoland, and then I didn't really enjoy it so much. And it's kind of been that way throughout the whole thing. Like, I don't have a passion that just makes me so excited to get out of bed in the morning, and there's nothing I can do to kind of beef up that feeling. There's nothing I can do to make myself feel a certain way about anything. And that used to really bother me because, that's another thing that everybody talks about. That's another key to success is you got to find something you're passionate about. And I just have always found passion to be kind of a fleeting feeling. It's never really lasted long for me with anything. But what I am if I had to like pick something that I was passionate about, I would say I'm just kind of passionate about self-employment and building businesses and that aspect of things, but the particulars of it, like I want to be a caricature artist and that's my passion, or I want to be a bookkeeper and that's my passion. Those things aren't really, it wouldn't be accurate to say that. So I would say if you're not passionate about any particular thing, I wouldn't spend a great deal of time like trying to find the thing you're passionate about, because for me, I never really found that, or if I did, it didn't last very long. I'd say, consistency and other um, other traits would probably be more important to success, unless you're just the type of person who can sustain feelings of passion for a long time. I was just never the type.
Yeah, this is another place where we are very different because I'm the sort of person who can just work up energy about almost anything. And so that creates the opposite problem where it's more like, well, what do I focus on when everything is so beautiful and interesting? I'm
Yeah.
I'm curious. I want to ask some things kind of relating to the beginning of your career as a caricature artist. I'm kind of a big doodler, in high school, I was probably the number one contributor of graffiti on the walls of my high school.
Hmm.
I am curious what did that skill development look like for you? And was there a specific turning point that you can remember where you went from being kind of a shitty caricature artist to being a good caricature artist to being maybe a great caricature artist?
Well, I don't think I've crossed the great threshold. um, but the difference from shitty to good was just time on task, really. Just repeated practice. I remember the very first caricature I did. Or the very first caricature I did for money, rather. It was a cloudy day at the beginning of summer in the Carlsbad Legoland amusement park, and it was a picture of this little redheaded kid, and I made his ears like way too big, like even for an exaggerated caricature. This poor kid, I made his ears just huge, and I was super nervous. My hand was shaking, and his dad didn't like it, but the kid liked it, thank God. So they paid for it, and that was the first one. And I would say I was shitty the entire time that I worked there. So that was about 4 months. But if you're doing it every day, you're doing it for like 8 hours a day, four days a week, you improve pretty quickly. So, but even then, I would say probably it took me around year three before I was really, really comfortable with it. Like now I can do it in my sleep. It doesn't make me nervous at all, but it took about 3 years to get to that point.
So I want to really dive into this because I'm fascinated by skill progression, and this is sort of I think a lot of people would see this as a simpler, like very easy to visualize task, at least.
Hmm.
So when you first got started, when you went to, let's say, apply for this job at Legoland, what did the process look like? Was there a training program? What was the training like? Can you walk me through even before day one?
Yeah, sure. So the reason I applied was because I had been following this caricature artist online. I've been following his blog, and he worked at SeaWorld, which is also here in San Diego. And I just wrote to him, and I didn't even think that I would apply for a job. I wasn't even thinking that way. I just wrote to him and I said, "Hey, I think your work is really awesome. I want to learn more about caricatures. Is there a way you can like get me into the park so I can come watch you work?" Because I couldn't afford a ticket because they were ridiculously expensive and I was very poor at the time. And he wrote me back and he said, "No, sorry, I can't like get you into the park, but if you want to learn, the best way to learn is to get hired. And here's a link to the application to work at one of the amusement parks." So I just filled it out on a whim, thinking like, "Oh, my samples are terrible. I'm not going to get the gig, but might as well."
But you did have
Uh,
samples.
I did, yeah, because I'd been sketching and doodling my whole life, but like my samples were very, so like if I was going to do a caricature back in the day, like before I learned how to do it live, it would take me like, an hour to 3 hours to get it right because I was more the opposite of how I've actually work. So the sample. But then when I heard from Legoland a couple months later, and I came in for an interview, they have you do like a live sketch right there of the person who was interviewing you, and it was terrible. I mean, I'd never done it before, like on command, without being able to erase anything, and it was god awful. And I was pretty convinced I wasn't going to get the job because it was so bad. But the great thing about those amusement parks is during the summertime, they get really, really busy. So they basically just need a bunch of warm bodies in the seats. So you can literally, look like you drew something with your feet and you'll get hired. So I got a second interview, which was then, what was it? It was like, it basically amounted to 6 hours worth of training with one of their artists. So it was a pretty big cohort. There were like 10 or 12 of us, and we all, came into Legoland after hours, and we all had easels, and he showed us how to use the materials and everything else. And it was really nerve-wracking, the way they taught us, because they taught us that you weren't supposed to do any sort of undersketching. You couldn't draw in a pencil. So everything was done with a big, thick black marker. So you really couldn't make any mistakes. But I'm really happy I learned that way, because now that's the way I draw, and I don't have to do undersketching, and you just get used to it.
What is undersketching?
Well, so like sketching it out with a pencil first so you can erase mistakes. We didn't do that. So you just drew everything with a marker. So you really can't make mistakes.
That's kind of how I do this podcast. No editing.
Uh-oh. That's not good. No, it's fine.
So you developed the skill on the job. To make this chronology even worse, I want to hear about your artistic experience prior to that. Were you always doing sort of caricature, cartoony style art, or was your art more of a realist style? Can you tell me about when you were in college, supporting your accounting degree?
Well, the job I got at Legoland, I got right when I started college. So those two things went kind of concurrent. I started college late. I was 22. My artwork beforehand had always, it was pretty sporadic. I liked doing portraits. I liked doing fantasy art. I dabbled in vector art for a while. I was actually just looking over like my old artwork back in the day, and I was like, damn, I was pretty good. But yeah, nothing specifically to do with caricatures. Or if I did try to do caricatures, like I said, it took me a really long time, and like 3 hours per face, which you really can't do when you're doing live work. So a lot of artists try to get into caricatures, and they can't for that reason, because if you're doing something live, you can't be a perfectionist, and a lot of artists are. So they just take a really long time, and that's kind of detrimental to you making any money as an artist if you're going to take, 15, 20, half an hour to draw a single person. So I guess that's a strength of mine, is that I've never been a perfectionist. I'm a fan of the 80% solution. Like, if it's 80% good, ship it.
That is something that you and I certainly have in common.
Yay!
Yeah.
One thing.
Well, also, I think in at least some degree of a fascination with art. I'm curious, do you have, you obviously have at least some sort of interest and hobby and professional interest in caricature and art in general. Are you a fan of art, of other artists? Is there anybody that you feel like you've been influenced by or moved by?
I've always loved Boris Vallejo. I don't know if you've heard of him. He is
I have not.
a fantasy artist. Boris Vallejo and Julie Bell. They do, he did a lot of movie posters back in the 80s. I think he did a lot of the National Lampoon stuff. But he was an awesome, amazing oil painter fantasy artist. I always loved him. Julie Bell, very similar. Lately, I've been getting into sculpture, which is hella fun, and it's like so exciting for me. And I just look forward to my sculpture class all the time. And so I'm starting to get more like I'm, just researching artists in that field, and there's just some amazing ones. But yeah, I'm kind of all over the place. Like I have passions when it comes to art, but they're very fleeting. It lasts for a couple months, and then I move on to something else. But for caricature artists, I've always liked Tom Richmond. Um, Actually, one of the artists who works for me occasionally is like one of my idols. He's just amazing. His name is Court Jones, and he does just ridiculously amazing caricatures with like oil paintings, with digital art. He's super awesome. Court Jones, look him up. He's amazing.
Court Jones, we'll look him up. And anyone that you name drop here will be included in the show notes with links so people can check them out. I'm curious, is there any sculpture artists that you're really moved by?
Okay, I'm gonna totally butcher his name, but I think it's Philippe Faraut. And I'm not sure. He might be French, he might be Italian, but he does these ridiculous ceramic sculptures. So that's what I'm learning right now is ceramics sculpture. So I'm just obsessed with all the artists in that field right now. But he's just redonkulously good.
This is great because it will give me some new artists to look at. I think one thing, this is definitely something that we have in common, a fascination with art to some degree. I think when we met, I probably told you or the group that, I have sort of a collection. Actually, so just for a little bit of backstory, Julia and I met on a personal development cruise with a group of friends. Two of our podcast guests actually were on the cruise with us. I interviewed Jesse and Michael for this podcast, and I picked up a piece while I was there. I have been meaning to send the group a picture of the framed piece now. And before,
which one was it? Did I see it?
It's the piece is called "Distracted" by Barry McCann. It's a picture of a woman with a parasol walking through a field, and she looks distracted. Shocker. You probably didn't see it on the boat because I bought it the last day and they, roll it up and ship it to you. I have been meaning to send a group text with the framed piece.
Awesome.
Go ahead.
It's an original?
It's not the original. It is one of the series.
Oh, okay.
So I think there are 180 copies or something like that.
So click that link I just texted to you, Philippe Faraut. This guy is ridiculous.
Okay, okay. Here's something fun that we're going to do. I'm gonna look at this and then I'm going to try to describe the style and my impressions of it.
Do it
to the audience. Did you send it to me in a messenger?
On Skype.
Right.
Okay. There you go.
Philippe Faraut.
Yeah, I have no idea how to pronounce his name.
Oh my goodness.
Right?
So the very first sculpture is a woman in a veil. And it is stunning.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
The next one is a man with a mustache and long hair. His musculature is very David-esque. He looks pretty shredded. He's got a sword hanging by his legs. He looks like he's pretty much chilling. There's some more. Oh, there's a really lovely lady with a sheet or something wrapped around her. I'm really into. I'm a big fan of a lot of the classics. I saw Michelangelo's the Rondanini Pieta, I think is how you pronounce it, when I was in Milan.
I'm jelly.
Yeah, I highly recommend going to the Sforza if you have any interest in sculpture and Renaissance art whatsoever. Definitely go to Milan and check out the Sforza. That's where the Last Supper is, but it was closed for renovation when I was there, so I didn't get to see it.
Now, where is the David sculpture?
I think the statue of David's at the Louvre.
Oh,
I've never been to
no.
the Louvre. No?
No, it's not in France, it's in Italy, because my friends visited the David sculpture when they were in Italy, so it's somewhere there,
Um,
but I don't
Not
know.
sure. The statue of David. That's considered pretty much the greatest piece of sculpture work of all time. I've
Rightly so.
have you, so do you can you tell me what makes it the greatest? Because as much as I am a fan of art and am interested in it, I'm certainly at best a dilettante and could not tell you why it is particularly incredible.
Hey, well, you're doing better than me because you know what a dilettante is, and I don't. I have no idea. I am not. I have no classical training in art. I took, I think, one art history class in college, and I don't remember how I did on it. But so I really have no basis with which to say why the David sculpture is the greatest sculpture. I just know that it inspires a feeling in me.
Well, it is in Florence, and at least from my at the thing that I'm really noticing about it, just looking at it right now, is the hands are extremely precisely done. I mean, every part of it looks extremely precisely done, but the hands especially seem very detailed and well done. So we're
So
talking
I
about
just I
good.
just sent you over Skype. I sent you a piece that I finished last night. So this is my humble attempt at sculpture portraiture.
How many of these have you done?
This is my third one.
Wow. So I'm gonna. Would you mind if I share this with the audience in the show notes?
Yeah, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, because it's really well done. It's a sculpture of a man, looks like maybe in his 60s or early 70s, wearing a tie. His
It's meant to be J.R.R. Tolkien.
Wow, one of my favorites.
Aha,
I
nice.
love it now. It's a really
Cool.
excellent bust. Julia, when I am wealthy enough to have a marble bust of myself done, I'm going to commission you to do it. Would you be willing to do that?
Absolutely, I will.
Oh my
Only if you're wearing your captain's hat in it, though.
Oh my gosh. Okay, okay. I've been meaning. I think I actually did write about this on my blog, but I would love for you to share the story of the captain's hat, and then I'll share a little bit about why that was actually a pretty formative experience for me.
I do not know if I have enough information to share a story about your captain's hat. All I remember is you wore it everywhere all the time, and I'm not sure I ever saw your actual head.
So we're on this cruise, day one. So I had just come to this cruise from like 10 weeks traveling around Europe. And during my backpacking tours, I can tell you exactly, I had two button ups, three t shirts, five pairs of underwear, and socks and two pairs of pants, right? So I had very, very limited clothes. And so I get on the cruise and I'm just disgusting, right? Like I needed to buy some clothes just to go to dinner that evening. So I go and I buy a white button up and I see the captain's hat in the store on the ship, and so I buy a captain's hat. And so I go to dinner wearing a captain's hat and a white shirt, and all of a sudden everybody's like, "Oh, hello, captain!" And I'm clearly not the captain. I'm like a bearded guy, and like I'm lost half the time. I've always got a drink in my hand because I like to live extravagantly when I'm on a cruise. And so I'm clearly not the captain, but everybody quickly started calling me captain, and within days or really within hours, I just became recognized, and everybody knew me as the guy who's wearing the captain's hat, and became this joke for people to say, "Aye, aye, captain," and just make jokes as I'd walk by. Now, the important lesson that I learned here was about fame or notoriety, especially in a context. So, fame is contextual, right? People in a context, fame is only achievable within some sort of context, right?
Hmm.
And B, it's cheap, right? All you need to do to become noteworthy is be a little bit different than everybody else. And C, it is hard to get rid of because Thursday or Friday, 3 or 4 days into the cruise, I am tired of everybody acknowledging me as this sort of clown version of the captain and making jokes. So I take off the hat and I'm like, I'm done wearing the hat. I just don't want people to like to give me this caricature anymore. And then what would happen is people still recognize me and they'd be like, where's your hat, Captain? And it didn't go away. Like the questions just changed and the attention became different. And I was so annoyed by it because I'm a little bit of a joker. I'm pretty lighthearted. I like to bring levity into situations. And I don't see that as being my defining personality trait. So when that became my identity to all of these people, and then I realized I couldn't get rid of it, and I was essentially trapped by it, I think I learned a really important lesson about attention and fame and notoriety that is important to learn, and I'm glad I got to learn it in this situation where now it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's you only have one chance to make a first impression, right?
Right.
So yeah, it's funny. I kind of ascribed that persona to you as well because I'd never met you before. I didn't know who you were. We'd never chatted or emailed or anything else. You were completely new to me. And so that is the kind of persona that I ascribe to you, like rather exuberant, flamboyant, louder than life, larger than life, kind of personality, which you have to a degree, obviously, but that's not all there is to you, you know?
Well, I appreciate that. And hopefully I can learn to love that part of myself. I'm curious.
You don't?
Go ahead.
You don't love it?
I love being lighthearted. I love humor. I love happiness and optimism. I don't love not being taken seriously as a result.
Mm.
I'm curious, have you ever had an experience like that where maybe there's something about, I mean, there's always many things about ourselves that we have to learn to live with, but is there anything about yourself that comes to mind as being something that you've had to learn about yourself or deal with?
Well, there have been many things I've had to deal with about myself.
Maybe recently, if there's something specifically on your mind where you've kind of gotten some insight into who you are and that's been important.
Interesting. Well, I will tell you something that I struggle with that I still haven't figured out the answer to, because that's the most recent one that comes to mind. I cannot figure out my strengths. And I know that sounds strange, but usually people have at least an idea of what their strength is. Like, I am good at this, or this particular personality trait that I have is at least partly responsible for the good things that have happened in my life, etc. And I, for the life of me, cannot figure it out. And it kind of hampers me and hinders me when I am experiencing self-doubt, because I don't have any one thing where I can point to and say, aha, but I'm good at that, or aha, but I have this strength. I still have not been able to figure that out, and I'm not sure if I ever will, and that's okay too, but that's where I'm at right now.
That is a profound struggle to deal with. There's a great resource that when I was, I think that we all deal with this to some extent, and certainly even now I deal with this, but for a brief time I got a respite from dealing with it when I took Penn State has a strengths exam through their positive psychology department. Jonathan Haidt, who wrote...
Oh, I love him.
Yeah, he wrote The Happiness Hypothesis, great book. Another one called
The Righteous Mind.
That's one you told me about. It's on my reading list. I really need to get there. If you Google his strengths exam, it is really long, which I think is like an investment worth making because then you take the results a lot more seriously. But when I took the exam, it came back and it told me that my number one strength was creativity, and then it gives you your top five. So mine were creativity, courage, humor, spirituality, and there was one more that's escaping me right now. But for a year or two, really, I had that on my wall, and I would look at those every day just to remind myself. And I mean, it's BS, right? Like those could be applied to almost anybody, but it made me
Hmm.
feel a lot better, and it just gave me a sense of confidence. Like, oh, I'm creative, I can do anything, you know?
Yeah, I think it helps. I think it. I uh, I had a conversation with somebody um, a couple days ago who had the opportunity to talk to Tom Cruise a number of times. He had like 12 meetings with him, I think, and his assessment of Tom Cruise was that Tom Cruise is a complete idiot. But
What?
Tom, but
Okay,
Tom
continue. Tell me more.
Cruise believes in himself so much and he has so much confidence that it just gives him the power to just blast through obstacles despite the fact, well, despite in this person's opinion that he's not very intelligent.
It's like Donald
And
Trump.
right, exactly. So the key here is you just have to believe in yourself hard enough and you can overcome any lack of intelligence or many, many other character defects.
There does seem to be something about just resolving the internal dispute with yourself just long enough to get stuff done.
Yes, exactly. And I think those of us who tend to be very introspective and kind of keep everything inside and are quicker to, fault ourselves than to take any sort of blame or praise or anything else. Have to learn how to maybe shelf all that for a while and just kind of get things done and, fake it till you make it, which I am good at that. I am good at faking it till I make it.
Which is hilarious because I see you as being extremely authentic, uh, at least, and I feel like I've only known you for a few months now, but I feel like we've gotten to get to know each other because on some level you can be pretty vulnerable with me, and I can be pretty vulnerable with you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Justice.
I want to jump in to more of the business discussion. I want to know when you first started freelancing, what did it look like for you when you first started freelancing? And because you had a pretty rapid growth curve, at least from what I understand, can you talk to me about what it looked like when you first started and what the big sort of turning points were for you in terms of developing your business?
Sure, there were a couple. So the very first, like, I got started freelancing and I was just doing a gig here and a gig there for, a couple years. I started my very first freelancing gig was in 2011, and I didn't go full time with the business until 2013. So it just kind of grew organically, which is what I was comfortable with. I had a part-time job at the time. I was working as a graphic designer and project manager 3 days a week at a nonprofit, which, it wasn't a ton of money, but it was like a steady paycheck. So it just kind of happened. It just kind of grew, and I explored a lot of different ways to get more business and make it work. And the big turning points were switching up my market because I was originally focused on trying to get as customers people like wedding planners, event planners, birthday parties, anniversary parties, office parties, kind of local, smaller one-off events. And when I realized that there was more opportunity and more of a market in trade shows, then that's what kind of was you know, the first catapult to the business becoming something bigger. So just learning how to kind of switch up my marketing techniques and speak the language of, trade show organizers as opposed to wedding planners. That was different marketing language, different messaging, different outcomes, different
Can you talk
pretty
me through
much
some
everything.
of the specifics? I'm curious because what kind of trade shows are we talking here? Like what sort of trade show, benefits from having a caricature artist sitting there, hawking their services for lack of a better term. And how, like, what do those conversations look like? How do you pitch the organizer? And then once you're on the field, so to speak, and you have people sort of approaching you, how do you close that deal of getting them to buy a caricature from you?
hmm So, wait, I'm hearing myself and it's very disorienting. Okay, I'm not anymore. Sorry. Something weird happened with Skype. Um, your question was, how do you get those clients? What does that look like?
Yeah, first, like, the obviously there's marketing to the trade show organizer, and then there's actually being on the floor. So
hmm
what do both of those activities look like for you at your best?
Okay, well, being on the floor is very simple because I charge by the hour and not per drawing. So I just have to show up and be my natural, beautiful self and draw people, and so that part's easy. Getting the client is something that I have had to, work on and hone and research my target market and figure out what they want. It's pretty much just the basics of customer research in any kind of field that you want to get into. So I've, taken people out to coffee. I've bribed them with free caricatures. I've sent them long emails. I've had phone conversations. And what you're trying to do is just kind of get into your ideal customer's head and figure out what it is that they want. So, for instance, if you're pitching your services to, say, a bride, because she wants something interesting to do on her wedding day, she wants something for the guests, it's a very different set of outcomes that you're selling as opposed to a trade show. So trade show marketers, what they care about is they've just spent, 20 grand on a booth and they've flown out their entire sales team to, Las Vegas for the show. And so they have a lot of wants and desires, but what they most want is they want some way to track ROI. They want to understand how many people came into the booth. What did we do to get them there? Was it effective? Do we have their contact information? Are we memorable? Is the freebie that we're giving away, is it something that they're going to actually keep and cherish? Or are they just going to throw it in the wastebasket? Like, these are the things that they care about. So, I had to educate myself on that in the beginning because I'd never exhibited at a trade show. I didn't know, what type of outcomes marketers were looking for. But once I figured it out, then it's very easy to connect what you do to the outcomes that they want. So, for instance, everybody wants to increase their booth traffic and they want to get more people into the booth and they want to talk to more people. So, digital caricatures is a great way to do that because it's on a big screen. Everybody can see what's happening. They can see it from up to, 20, 30 feet away. Um, a lot of people haven't seen digital caricatures being done before, so it has kind of that cool novelty tech factor to it. So that's the traffic hook, right? Like, increase your traffic. So there's that. And then as far as actually connecting with the attendees and being able to, follow up with them later and everything else, I say, well, hey, look, while I'm drawing this person, you have about 6 minutes to chat with them about your service, about your product. They're basically a captive audience for you. And it's a way to get people to sit down and actually listen to what you have to say. So there's that hook. And then on every caricature that I print out, there's a link to where they can go get their digital download. And what a lot of companies choose to do is host the caricatures on their own website so that if the person wants to get their digital copy, they have to go visit my client's website. So that's another way to increase engagement and, increase the return on investment and everything else. So you just have to figure out what your target client wants and then connect what you do to those outcomes. And it's pretty easy to do if you understand the customer properly. You can think of ways, and then come up with new ways about how your service can help them get what they want, because ultimately they don't care about caricatures, they don't care about your particular art style. What they care about is more traffic, more customers, more engagement. So then it's just a matter of, creating the right marketing language and speaking to their needs and then delivering on it. Easy.
So how did you first identify trade show marketers? Like when you were making the shift from wedding planners to trade show marketers, how did you first identify the opportunity? And then once you identify the opportunity, how did you go about that customer research process?
So I first identified it because somebody actually hired me to come sit in their booth and do caricatures, and I never thought about it before until that happened, and then I realized what an opportunity this was, because it was a huge hit. So the first company that ever hired me to come work at their booth, they actually won the award for the entire show of the best booth because I was there. So that was eye-opening to me, and I thought, well, hey, this is something that, somebody had the ingenuity to think of. I hadn't thought of it. And it was a huge hit. They had a huge crowd around their booth all day, and they were able to get a lot of engagement. So I basically just drilled the marketer who had hired me. I said, well, what made you think of this? Why did you want a caricature artist? What did you try before? What kind of freebies have you tried to hand out in the past? What made them work? What made them didn't? And we just had a number of conversations, and she ended up hiring us, in later years for other shows. So that was kind of the conversation that sparked the whole thing. And then, it's just figuring out where they are, pitching your services to them, and then learning as you go. So now what I do is after every show, I have my assistant call the client about a week after, and they do a little post-mortem, and they say, okay, what worked, what didn't work, did you get the outcome you were hoping for by hiring us, is there anything we can do to improve next time? And so every single gig that we do, we're having more and more customer research conversations, and then we use that to iterate and improve our service offerings.
So obviously you learn the most in the very beginning. When did you completely shift focus? When were you like, okay, this is what we're doing 100% now because wedding planning isn't working out?
Oh, I mean, I still do weddings, and I do proms, and I do birthday parties and all that kind of thing. So we do it all. It's just that, trade shows were probably the bulk of what we do. So I didn't abandon everything else because, I could reasonably pursue both, and it wasn't like a one or the other type of decision. It was just a matter of, oh, okay, well, this actually works, and this is something that seems to be a big hit, and a lot of people seem to like it, and that turned out to be the case. And I'm not the only caricature artist who works at trade shows. There's a lot of them. So it's not like I'm the only one who's figured this out. I just found a good niche, and it's worked out pretty well.
Amazing. Now, how are you applying this knowledge that you've learned around customer research to your new venture? And is there anything that you've specifically learned starting up the new bookkeeping service that has been a game changer at all? I'm still learning, and I'm still applying. So I thought that I could apply a lot of things that I had learned in the caricature business to business development for the bookkeeping, and some of that's true, and some of it doesn't translate at all. So, for example, I put my prices on my website for JK Expressions. That's the caricature business. So I just have the hourly rate with the 3 different tiers up there. Everybody can see it. It's very clear. So I always like to see prices on a website. I prefer it to having to, fill out a web inquiry and then having to talk to somebody and blah, 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 and having to do a whole rigmarole when I just want to see what the price is.
So that's why I have it up on my website. Now, we tried to do that for the bookkeeping business, and it didn't work out so well because um, it's a lot more custom when you're quoting somebody to handle their books for the month. So we actually had pricing tiers up there. We had three different tiers, and we said on the website, like, prices may vary a little bit, or estimates may vary depending on your needs. But what we were finding was the prices we put up there were too low. So people would see the price on our website, and then we'd actually take a look at their QuickBooks file or their accounts, and we'd see, oh wow, this is actually going to be a lot of work, and then we quote them much higher, and then they felt like they were, what's the word? Not cheated, but you know what I mean?
Bamboozled.
Misled, yes. And so that's a lesson we learned, and now we don't have prices up on the website for that reason, is because the estimates that we give, they vary widely depending on, transaction volume and how much work it's gonna be. So that's just one example of how, things are a little different. Another thing is that the sales cycle is much longer with bookkeeping, because you're having to get somebody to trust you with their account access and their financial information, and that's not something that's going to be made in a quick 15-minute conversation. Like, I've booked massive 3-day, 4-figure, 5-figure gigs, and it can take a week, just 1 week from initial contact to them signing the contract. Really doesn't work that way with bookkeeping. It's multiple conversations over multiple weeks or months, and unless you know them beforehand, it takes a while for people to trust you. So that's been another adjustment, is just figuring out how long the sales cycle is, and then adjusting my expectations accordingly.
How long have you been working on the bookkeeping business, and have there been any successes for you thus far that you've learned from? Or failures, actually. I mean, it sounds like we already talked about one failure, but has there been any specific successes that you'd be comfortable, maybe not sharing customer details, obviously, but process details?
Yeah, so we officially started in August of last year, and as of right now, we have 3 monthly clients, which was enough for my business partner to quit her job. So now she's full-time with J&E Bookkeeping, which is awesome. We're very happy about that. One of the clients the most recent one that we signed was literally just the result of a cold email that I sent, that I just kind of mass blasted out a cold email
Oh
to
my
a bunch
gosh.
of businesses.
Please tell me about this email. Word
Okay.
for word if possible.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a big fan of cold email if you're doing B2B sales. I think it's if you can systematize it and automate it and kind of get it off your plate so it doesn't take much brain power for you, it's incredibly powerful, because work just gets done while you sleep, and you're not waiting for clients to come to you. You're going after them. So this was just somebody I found on LinkedIn, and it was a whole list of people. So I basically target people on LinkedIn according to industry. So I look for the contact information for all the catering companies in San Diego, or all the restaurant associations or real estate agents, blah blah blah. So this was just the result of that, and sent them an email that said, are you looking for a bookkeeper? That was the subject line. And I said, hello, found you on LinkedIn. My name is Julia Kelly. Me and my partner have had X years of experience with bookkeeping. Are you interested in having a discussion about it if you need one? And, he wrote back and said, yes, we do need a bookkeeper. So that was in October, which gives you an idea of kind of how long the sales cycle takes. But as of a couple weeks ago, we signed them on as a monthly client. So that I was pretty happy about that one.
So that's about a 3-month sales cycle, which is pretty close to my sales cycle when I'm doing higher ticket app development sort of work for higher ticket for startups. So, lower ticket if you're like an enterprise company, but, for startups, they're often spending anywhere from $30,000 to $70,000 on app development, and so that does take a lot of time. I'm curious, how many of those cold emails did you send in order to get that one deal closed? And you probably have other deals in the pipeline, but I'm just curious about your conversion.
If you give me a second, I can tell you because I keep stats on this. One moment. So I send, well, right now it's paused because my assistant has been sick, but generally I try to send out about 70 emails a day.
70.
Yeah.
But they're canned.
Canned, yes. Yeah, so it's like the only thing that's customized is their name. And I could probably get more, I could probably have a better ROI if I kind of customized it to the company. And I have not experimented with that just yet, but let's see.
So while you're looking at that, I want to share a tactic that worked on me. I was running the innovation department at an agency in Boston, and this lady who was building a sales like artificial intelligence company in San Francisco shoots me a canned email like you sent out, and it was a canned email. Obviously, I knew it was a canned email, and I deleted it immediately because I was like, I'm not going to spend really any amount of money on additional like outsourcing sales, right? It didn't make sense to me. Well, sales is definitely a priority in this business, and she follows up, and she just follows up like, hey, just checking to see if you got my email. And I was like, oh, she's good. I like that. And I deleted that one too. Well, she followed up. I think that she must have followed up at least 4 times in total, so 5 emails until I finally was like, all right, fine, let's hop on the phone. And I think that actually she had probably 7 scripts that she would send to people, a week apart, basically, or maybe 6 to 9 days apart. And I think that her business model actually was essentially automating that whole process, and so she was kind of eating her own dog food. But I can tell you something, it got me to call her back, and I was like, okay, fine. You were persistent, even though I know every single email that you sent me is canned, you didn't stop, and you're selling me sales, so I like your strategy, let's talk. Now, we didn't end up working together, and she didn't follow up after that, which she should have, because if she had continued following up after that first conversation, there's a pretty good chance I would have been like, screw it, we'll drop the $3,000 a month and try out her service, because if it gets me one deal, even in a year, it's worth it. So I really want to point out that, for you, maybe, you're sending 70 emails a day. If you follow up with, the 69 that don't respond, that's a lot of money. And B, now if you could talk a little bit more about what you think your conversion has been kind of in total, I'm curious to hear it.
Well, for that one, that was the 556th email that I sent that resulted in that client.
Wow. So, but still, if you get one job, and how long does it take you to send 70 emails? An hour, a couple hours?
No, I mean, a couple minutes.
Oh, really?
It's just a script. So it's just a Gmail script, so you can mass send a whole bunch of emails at once.
What?
But
is this something that we can have access to?
Sure, just look for yet another mail merge. It's just a Gmail script. It's free.
Nice. Very nice. Yet another mail merge.
Yeah. So it does take a bit of work, obviously, to look for people's email addresses, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
So let me ask you this. Are you inserting any kind of special sauce or differentiating factor into your bookkeeping services, or are you purely trying to capture a small amount of the market to create recurring revenue and create sort of like a lifestyle business?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question? Am I trying to create a lifestyle business? No.
No. So tell me what are your goals?
Yeah, goals, seven-figure business is, or eight, eventually. Lots of employees that are completely remote, no centralized office space. Everybody works on their own schedule, and if they can keep the deadlines and, make the client happy, then we don't care if you're clocking in or out. Um, let's see. So what differentiates us for in terms of appeal to clients is we are 100% remote, so you're not dealing with paper. We're not coming into your office. You don't have to make a desk space for us, etc. We use exclusively QuickBooks Online, so we're not having to log into your system or do any sort of remote login, which is a pain in the ass. And we have flat monthly fees, so you're not paying per hour, you're just paying per service, kind of. So you know what your expenses are going to be every single month, and there's no variance there. And with those three things, we're differentiated quite a lot from the majority of kind of mom and pop shop bookkeeping businesses. Now there's a few, there's not many, there's a few bookkeeping shops that operate the way that we do, but mostly, like, the average bookkeeper that you meet is pretty old school.
Who is your ideal client? What do they look like?
We figured it out, actually. They have a look. They wear plaid shirts. I'm
Really?
serious. Yes. Yeah. So the client that we just landed, they are our ideal client. They're mid-30s, very casual, wear plaid shirts all the time. Business is, couple million, 1 to 5 million in revenue a year. And they just want somebody to professionally handle the books, and they don't want to have their finger in every pie, and they don't need to be constantly checking up on you. They trust you as a professional, and they are comfortable with remote bookkeeping. So this new client that we just landed is exactly that. Their business is doing very well. They're very busy. They don't want to be bothered with the details. They want you to handle it. They trust you to handle it, and they're comfortable with the remote bookkeeping system, and they're just super cool and chill, and they're a lot of fun. So that is our ideal client.
Are you equipped to handle businesses that are growing extremely rapidly? Are you primarily focused at more typical, like, SMB market?
Well, we have one client who is a Y Combinator startup, and they have grown very, very rapidly, and we handle quite a lot of volume for them. So yeah, I'd say we're pretty equipped to deal with the growing company, because accounting principles, they don't really vary from company to company, and there's not a lot of figuring out that one has to do. Like, there's a right way to reconcile the books, and it doesn't really vary from company to company. So it's really just a matter of transaction volume. So we can deal with companies who started with very little transaction volume, and now they have a lot. Does that make sense?
I think so. I think so. I know absolutely nothing about accounting, so when this becomes a problem for me, I'm certainly coming your way, Julia.
Good. We are
So
equipped.
that I don't have any questions prepared, and we're coming up on 70 minutes here. I want to be respectful of your time. I'm curious, do you have any? Is there anything on? First of all, is there anything on your mind that you've been thinking about a lot lately that you wish someone would ask you about?
Wow. Now, see, this is a question I wish you would have given me beforehand, because I'm sure I could have come up with a very smart answer. Put on the spot. Is there anything I wish someone? I will tell you what I wish. It's not a question people would ask me. I wish people would go read a website called Slater Star Codex, because there is so much uncertainty in the world right now. Slate Star Codex, sorry. There's so much uncertainty in the world right now, and there's so much worry, and I would venture to say there's a lot of hysteria, and there's a lot of misinformation, and I don't think most of us are properly equipped with the critical thinking skills to be able to dissect everything that gets thrown at our Twitter and Facebook feeds. And because of that, I think people are unnecessarily disturbed and perturbed because now all we do is we read news headlines. We don't actually read news articles, and we don't really know how to distinguish between what is quote unquote fake news versus what is actually good journalism. What is partisan versus nonpartisan, how graphs can be manipulated to look like they make one point very powerfully, whereas if you adjust one tiny little thing, that point is not made as powerfully. Anyway, there's just a lot of that type of stuff right now, and I have a hard time distinguishing and making a lot of those determinations just for myself as a layperson trying to understand what's going on in the world. And so I imagine a lot of other people are too. And one place to start to just maybe give one some perspective on the meta issues that we're dealing with these days is a website called Slate Star Codex. So that's what I would recommend.
Awesome. I will include that in the show notes. Is there somewhere where my audience can find you if they want a new bookkeeper or perhaps a caricature artist for their next trade show?
Absolutely. The website for my caricature business is jkexpressions.com. The website for bookkeeping is jandebookkeeping.com. I know that's a terrible name. We're going to fix it. So that's J as in Julia, and A-N-D, E as in Elizabeth, jandebookkeeping.com.
I don't think that's a terrible name at all.
Really, I really don't like it. My partner really likes it, and she's trying to convince me that we should keep it. So we haven't like incorporated it at all. It's just a DBA. I don't like it because J and E is hard to explain to somebody over the phone. You have to spell the whole thing out. That bothers me. And then there's nothing particularly interesting about it. So we really, really like Rebel digits, but rebel is not really a word that you want associated with your bookkeeping and accounting. You kind of want things done by the book, understandably, but we haven't come up with a better name yet. We're working on it.
I would hire Rebel digits. That sounds awesome.
I know you would because you're a rebel, but some clients that we're going after are not rebels, unfortunately.
I understand. Awesome. Well, Julia, I would love for you to have the last word. And is there anything else that my audience can take with them before they go? Or before
GMOs are safe.
Oh, I have to let you have that. Okay.
You said the last word.
Okay. Thank you so much, Julia. It's been an excellent conversation. I can't wait till next time.
All right. Thanks, Justus. This was fun.
Hey everybody, a few more things before you go. If you enjoyed today's episode of Hacker Practice with my good friend Julia Kelly, then please hit that subscribe button wherever you are listening, and then go over to iTunes and leave us a review so that we can get in front of more people just like you and they can hear our wonderful interviews. Thirdly, if you didn't like the episode, or even if you did and you just want to drop us a note, go over to hackerpractice.com and fill out the feedback form on the homepage. That's hackerpractice.com. Leave us some feedback, and I will read it and respond to it personally. So that's feedback to hackerpractice.com. Leaving us a review on iTunes. That would be super duper helpful. And finally, hitting that subscribe button wherever you're listening. I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode with my good friend, Julia Kelly. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time on Hacker Practice.